What's up guys, it's Terry Lorenzo and today we're going to be doing a look at the Mechrevo 16 Ultra and specifically air cooling versus water cooling in 8 different benchmarks. There's actually a little bit more than 8. If you really want to, just skip to the end of the video to a part that looks kind of like this and we'll get into the percentage results, the average percentages and all of that stuff. But if you're happy to actually watch the actual, it's quite a long video, if you're happy to actually watch all of that with all the testing that was going on and everything, and also a lot of the word "and," especially in the second part of the video, then feel free to keep watching. If not, I'll see you guys for the average results at the end of the video.
So here we are on the Mechrevo 16 Ultra. If you guys want to look, these are the settings right here. So we are at the native 2560 by 1600 resolution at 300 Hertz. This is with the DGPU only mode, and we do have color at 10-bit. I believe it's just an 8-bit plus FRC panel. This is the mini LED panel, but all the testing today will be done in SDR mode. This is also the driver version here, 576.52, which is currently the latest as of filming this video. And it does seem to have been, or it seemed to have fixed the wattage issues. Wattage is now more peaking around that 170 mark, which still means maybe there's a little bit more performance to be had. Also, just a quick heads up, we are actually doing these performance tests with memory integrity off, aka core isolation, or at least turning off memory integrity doesn't allow core isolation to be enabled. So just keep that in mind as well. And then here we also go, as you can see here, this is in the Mechrevo control panel, which is going to look very similar on XMG. This is DGPU only mode again. That's the only way you can unlock the 300 Hertz. Otherwise, it is maxed out at 240. And also looking at the performance modes, we are on the turbo mode, which I believe XMG calls overboost, but we do have GPU overclocking turned off, and it is in the extreme performance mode. We're not going to touch on custom mode or the other modes just today. And obviously liquid cooling testing will be done right after this test run. And we do have 8 tests today. Now we are going to start off here with 3D Mark. I just have the demo, so we are just going to be looking at Time Spy. This will sort of give us an idea of, I guess, the theoretical performance of the machine. And it'll be interesting to see sort of how this stacks up against some other laptop results. Unfortunately, I don't have any other laptops to compare it to. However, you can look at these results and compare it to your reviewer of choice and sort of see where this lands. Is this above average, below average, right on average? Let's find out. All right, starting off, we'll go down the list for this test. Black Myth Wukong, we'll have to actually switch accounts. It's on a different account. So let's start off with Counter-Strike 2. These are the settings we're running at. So we are running at the full 16 by 10, 2560 by 1600 at the max 300 Hertz. Brightness, that's just at default, and we are full screen. Going to advanced video, yes, we got boost play, contrast on, VSync is obviously off, low latency is on. Maximum FPS in game is at 1000, and we are on a preset of very high. So we just finished the first benchmark run. Again, this was at the very high preset. And it looks like we've got an average of 304. I'll actually show you right there, 304.2. And then P1, I believe, stands for the 0.1% lows of 161. Let's actually change the settings now down to very low. So, or not very low, we're just gonna change it to low. Yep. So we are now on the low settings, if you guys want to see. There we go. And these settings remain unchanged. we stay above that 300 hertz of the panel as the long descent lows. So we can't actually, so we don't actually hit 700, right? 694.4 average with a 0.1% low of 251.3. Yep, so the game's loaded up here. We are running again at the full resolution, but I'll show you to make sure you guys just see that real quick. So yep, here we go, 2560 by 1600 at the 300 hertz, full screen, no VSync. Reflex is actually disabled, but we'll just leave that disabled because I think that's just default. And these are our settings here. It's pretty much like a high preset. Everything is on high, but there have been some settings that have been enabled that are usually disabled. So just keep an eye out. Water quality is on custom. You've got high, no DLSS, no FSR. TAA is on high, so that's the anti-aliasing style. It's a temporal style. We are on DirectX 12 mode. I know some people like using Vulkan, but we're just going to leave it here on DirectX 12. And there are all your settings. And we just reached the end of the benchmark just then. And as you can see, a pretty respectable average of 135 FPS. Alrighty. So going on to options, here we go. Here are the settings we're running, 2560 by 1600. We're going to make sure that the aspect ratio, actually we can leave it on automatic. HDR, but we're going to make sure that's disabled. I'm going to leave that on disabled just for now. Graphics settings are already set to ultra. So we've got an average of 101.69. These are the settings we've got on. We're on DirectX 12 mode. No DLSS in this title, it's an older title. 2560 by 1600, exclusive full screen is enabled. And these are all the rest of the settings. We've got TAA on, and then looking at the graphics, we are on highest. I know you can actually crank this up a little higher. There's more than just highest. You can actually crank a few more things to ultra, but for the sake of simplicity, we're going to leave it on highest. So let's run this bad boy. And there you have it, yeah, an average FPS for the entire test run of 205. The minimum FPS was around 165 for the GPU. Alrighty, and now we've just switched accounts and we are going to be looking at Black Myth Wukong. This is one of the newer games that came out last year in 2024. And it is quite an intensive title and does have a lot of the ray tracing / path tracing features as well. So just looking at the settings here, I should mention there is only just borderless display mode. This hasn't been touched. Aspect ratio is left on automatic. However, I will mention that although it says 2560 by 1600, it does only render within the 16 by 9 frame. So just take that as you will. These are the settings I have here. I personally turn down the sharpening by 1. It's default to 5. I leave camera shake on, but I do not like motion blur, so that has been turned off. We are using DLSS upscaling. This, if you can't read that, I don't know exactly what it says, but this means frame generation is indeed off, and this is NVIDIA reflex latency as far as I can tell. Again, you can copy the settings as you see there. For this first test run, we're going to be using full ray tracing off, so we're just going to be using the inbuilt Lumen ray tracing, or nanite, whatever they call it, and everything has been set to very high, which is one from the maximum of cinematic. So keeping that in mind, let's run the benchmark. And as I thought, so an average of 84 FPS with minimum of 69. So we are back here, we've restarted the game and you can see the new settings. So going back here, these settings have been untouched, but these settings have been changed. Again, I don't know why this keeps like liking to go down. I don't know if that's actually showing, sorry, 65. We're gonna bring that up to the same we had before. Again, any higher than 67 and it says that. So this is currently set to 67, but I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the test run, it's gonna say 66. We are using DLSS once again, and this is DLSS quality, and we are using 2x frame generation. Although this laptop can support up to 4x, we're just gonna use 2x, and now we have ray tracing on at very high, so very high everything. And it's time to see the numbers here. Yep, and you can actually see that stutter. So looking here, you can see, at least I saw that really big stutter, and I did feel then there were a couple little minor stutters, but that massive stutter is what brings the FPS down to 56 minimum. The average of 98, I will say 98 with a minimum of 56 is not too bad, but considering if you actually look at this graph, really, if we look, that's 60 and that's 90, in between is going to be 85. The frame rate, other than those massive stutters, I mean, maybe if you want to include that one, should have stayed around 85 or above. So that was a huge stutter down below 60 FPS, and it's definitely something I felt. Look, I can only report on what I see, and that's sort of the result we got here. So looking here at Cyberpunk 2077, we are on version 2.21, which is currently the latest version. And let's go straight to the graphical settings. Now it does say custom. I can verify that this is 100% ultra settings. I've verified it like twice over. And to be fair, again, presets are just going to show you sort of what the preset actually means. And we have resolution scaling on off. This setting, and honestly Cyberpunk, it likes to like change your settings no matter like what you do. So at the end of the run, you'll actually see, oh, the setting you changed is not actually showing. So these are the settings I'm running at, which is the ultra preset. No ray tracing at all, 0 ray tracing. And if you go to video, we are at the full 2560 by 1600 again, low latency off, and we are on full screen mode. So let's run that benchmark. So we're just rounding out the test run right here. We're right near the end of the test run. From what I could tell, it seemed like the frame rate was hovering around that 90 to 100, low 100. So I'm guessing an average of about 105 or so. There you go, 106.47. But here are the settings now. If you guys want to just have a look at that. And let us run the benchmarks. So that test pass just passed through. We got an average of 79 and a minimum of 70. And finally, the last test we're going to do is Call of Duty Black Ops 6. So just quickly looking here, these are the settings we are using. This is the display mode. We are using full screen exclusive, and then once again, HDR is off. And these are the settings we have here, 2560 by 1600, 300 Hz refresh rate. Quality, we are using extreme preset. Nothing else has been changed. VRAM scale target is on 70%. And again, that is default. You can increase that if you'd like. Personally, I'm just going to leave it on 70%. Variable rate shading is on, but again, this is all part of the extreme preset, but you can see render resolution is at 100%, and there is no dynamic resolution scaling, so no upscaling at all. So without further ado, let's get into the benchmark. And there you go. So we get an average of above the 120 FPS mark. We've got 127 minimum graphics preset. with the only adjustment being the render resolution. They actually dropped minimum preset to 50% resolution. We've enabled that, but we are going to boost this back up to 100. So it's minimum everything else regarding the settings, but we are going to keep render resolution at 100%. So I'll scroll down. So you can actually see that actually makes it go to custom by doing that. So everything else though is going to be on that very low setting. And let us actually see what we can achieve here. Results here, very nice. So 207 average with 1% lows of 153. You know what? Let's actually do one more test run. So we're going to go unlimited here. Alrighty. And let's actually run that test one more time. And there we go. So we actually have an average of 201 and a 1% low of 147. But what's interesting here is actually that's actually lower. And this last test we're going to quickly run, it is actually Cyberpunk 2077 again on the Ray Tracing Ultra preset. Again, it says custom here because I've just changed DLSS to quality. These are the settings we're using. If you guys want to stop and pause and look at those settings. And we are going to be just checking the CPU and GPU temperature, and this is running on windowed borderless just for this one. But we're mainly going to look at the temperature differences for this one. So we're going to pull this open. So we had a maximum of 93. There was even one of the CCDs reached 95, maximum 92. So yeah, quite hot temperatures here. So it'd be nice to see these numbers. And again, this is just going to be, I'm just showing you in Cyberpunk. I'd like to see if these numbers can actually drop these maximums here once we go to water cooling. GPU peaked at 69 degrees. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed sort of that quick test run. That is with the air cooling results. We'll have a look at the water cooling results. I'm going to go a little bit quicker with the water cooling results just because it's going to be, I don't really need to do the commentary on it. We're just going to look at the results versus air cooling. I mean, mostly things are going to be the same. It's obviously going to perform a little bit better. And we'll talk about how much better with sort of an overview recap right at the end. So cue water cooling result montage now. And the water cooling time spa results, here we go, 22,137. And just about to start the Counter-Strike 2 benchmark. Again, we are on the very high preset. I'm not going to show the settings, but it is absolutely the very high preset, exact same as before. And we're doing the CS2 FPS benchmark. See you guys with the results. And the results just about to come in here for the very high test. And we have an average of 306 with 1% lows of 165.1. And the results coming here for the low test run, or very low, 761 average and 1% low of 268.1. And now we are on to Red Dead Redemption 2, and I will get back to you with the results. And the final results here for water-cooled Red Dead Redemption 2 is an average of 139.21, minimum of 47.42. And on to the next benchmark. And now we are on the Monster Hunter Wilds benchmark, exact same settings, which is the Ultra preset, which includes DLSS quality, no ray tracing, no frame generation. Onto the benchmark. And the results here for water-cooled Monster Hunter Wilds is 104.40 FPS average. Onto the next benchmark. Alright, next benchmark here is Shadow of the Tomb Raider. We have the exact same settings, and this is now the water cooling run. See you guys back with the results. And the results here for Shadow of the Tomb Raider gave us an average of 211 FPS. We got a maximum of 330 on the GPU. Average of it says 213 on the GPU. And a minimum of 170. Now we have Black Myth Wukong, and we're going to do both of those tests, and I'll see you back with both the non-ray tracing and the ray tracing results. And the results here for the non-ray tracing is an 87 average with minimum of 71 and a 0.5% low of 75. Onto the ray tracing benchmark. And here's the ray tracing result. I did still notice a few little micro stutters, however there were no major stutters, and that is reflected also with the graph here. 97 average with a minimum of 78 and 5% low of 81. Alrighty, ultra settings no ray tracing with water cooling. We got a 10902 average with minimum of 90.76. Onto the ray tracing benchmark. And Cyberpunk path tracing, we have an average of 80.89 with a low of 71.73. And once again, we have Call of Duty Black Ops 6, and we will be doing the 2 benchmark runs, one on the extreme preset and one on the lowest preset, I think it's called minimum, but with the resolution scaling still at 100 with no upscaling. I'll see you back with the results. And for the first results here, we have an average FPS of 126 with a low 1% of 85, and this is on the extreme preset. So next up, we'll have the minimum preset. And here are the results for the minimum preset at 100% resolution scaling, 208 average with a 1% load of 151. Again, I did see the frame rate peak, so we're going to do one more run with no frame rate cap and see if there's any difference. And we got an average of 204 with a low of 148. So once again, it does seem like it doesn't really help. If anything, makes it a bit worse. I don't know what's going on there, so I tend to just leave the frame rate cap on. And this is the Cyberpunk ray tracing benchmark again, just to look at the CPU package power. So once again, we will be just doing it on borderless window at full resolution still. Alrighty, let's have a quick look at what we can achieve. I will sort of come back with the results at the end, and I'll let you know sort of what the CPU package power and the temperatures are like. We were actually getting 110 watts, or 90 to 110 watts actually on the CPU, and here are the temperatures. Maximum on the GPU reached 55 as opposed to around 70, and the maximum on any one of the cores was 88.2. Guys, that is like a 6 to 7 degree improvement. That is really awesome. Nothing over 90. This water cooling is legit, and I will get back to you with sort of an average of all air cooling versus water cooling in just a moment. It's going to be a quick pound roundup with the total average as well.
So you've made it this far, or you've either used the time cards, or perhaps I haven't made the time cards and you've skipped to the end of the video. Well, let's just get right into the results. So first of all, let's start with 3D Mark. We see a 2.62% increase from air to water in the overall 3D Mark score, 2.97% increase in specifically the GPU score, and a 1.53% increase in the CPU score. Onto CS2. So in CS2, at the very high preset, we saw a whopping 0.89% increase in performance. For the 1% lows, it was an increase of 2.1%. Moving on to CS2 in the lowest settings, the averages actually increased by 9.59% on water cooling, with the 1% lows still a very nice 6.69%. Moving on to Red Dead Redemption 2, we saw a percentage increase of 2.68% for the averages and 4.68% for the 1% lows. Onto Monster Hunter Wilds, we saw an increase of the averages of 2.66%. In Shadow of the Tomb Raider, we saw a 2.93% increase in the averages and 3.03% increase in the 1% lows. Moving on to Black Myth Wukong with no RT DLSS quality, we saw an increase of 3.57% in the averages and 2.9% in the 1% lows. And then with ray tracing with FrameGen 2X, also at DLSS quality, we saw actually a minus 1.03% on water cooling. But the interesting thing was the whopping 39.29% increase in 1% lows by going to water cooling. There was a massive stutter in the air cooling results. Maybe it was because the CPU couldn't keep up. Maybe it was an anomalous stutter. But in the averages later, we actually will be doing an average including this outlier and also excluding it if you guys want to see that as well. This is some really official documentation, as you can see here. Cyberpunk 2077, we also did the 2 tests on this one as well. We had one with no RT, which was the ultra settings. And here we saw an increase in averages by 2.4% and an increase in the 1% lows by 2.38%. With Cyberpunk at ray tracing, an increase of 2.22% in the averages and a 1.57% increase in 1% lows. Cool. Moving on. Black Ops 6, and looking at the averages there on the extreme preset, we saw actually a decrease of 0.79%, but we did see an increase of the 1% lows of 4.94% by going to water cooling. Looking at the minimum settings or the lowest settings, however, it's the minimum settings but also keeping the resolution scale at 100, there was an increase in performance of 0.48%. And then in the 1% lows, we actually saw a minus 1.32% by going to water cooling. Then we did a third test, which was the minimum settings once again, but this time with no frame rate cap at all. Frame rate was completely unlimited. And we actually saw that this time an increase in the averages of 1.49% as opposed to the 0.48%. And the 1% lows increased by 0.68%. Finally, we have Cyberpunk. This is where I think it gets quite interesting. This is the Cyberpunk RT. We still got the frame rate data for it. It's going to be a little bit lower because it was with borderless window mode with a couple applications overlaying and stuff. But we saw an increase of 2.15% in averages and 4.02% in 1% lows. So not too bad there. But the main thing we wanted to look at is the temperatures. So on air cooling, we saw temperatures of the CPU reach up to 95 degrees Celsius and the GPU reaching about 70 degrees Celsius. And this is all while the CPU consumed on average around about 75 watts throughout the run. And if we look at water cooling, the CPU actually only reached a maximum of 88.2 degrees Celsius versus 95 degrees Celsius. The GPU reached a maximum of 55 degrees Celsius as opposed to 70 degrees Celsius. And the power of the CPU was on average around 100 watts versus before was around that 75 watts, which to be fair, the 75 watts is still higher than I think both Mechrevo and XMG sort of claim is the maximum sort of sustained load. But still, what's crazy to see is that is a 7.16% reduction in temperature for the CPU while it's consuming about 33.33% more power. Awesome. Throughout all of these tests, on water was definitely quieter than without the water cooling attachment. And also the GPU reduction of 21.4% in its temperature. Again, a 15 degree drop from 70 degrees Celsius to 55. Big thumbs up. Now, if you're wondering why we're not talking about GPU power, I did actually look at the GPU power. It's limited by NVIDIA. It was sitting around that 170, 171, 169. The total average, this is what you guys came here for. The total average across all 14 tests, an increase of the average frame rate of 2.28%. And for the 1% lows, we saw a higher increase of 2.88% across all the tests. And that is excluding the outlier, which was the Blackmyth Wukong ray traced benchmark, which had that massive anomalous sort of dip in performance. If we include that slightly anomalous result, it brings up that percentage to 5.91%, increase in 1% lows. Don't worry about that. If you're not really pushing the CPU side of things, so if you're not playing things at lower resolutions, is the water cooling going to be the revolutionary sort of massive increase in performance for your Mechrevo or for your XMG or for your electronics or Aftershock or however many brands there are? Is it going to be like an absolute game changer? I'm going to say probably not. I mean, this is based off my results. I definitely recommend you guys check other reviewers out as well. I really only did this just for fun. I was really excited to get this laptop and I wanted to show some results as well, at least, you know, my results. Yeah, those are the results. 2.28% averages, 2.88%, 1% lows, or 5.91 if you count that Blackmyth one. Let me know what you thought. You know, I'd love to see, you know, I'd actually love to hear some feedback. You know, what did you like about the video? What did you not like? I can tell you a few things I didn't like about the video. and things I could have done better. And I've got to say, I really give props to a lot of those other, honestly, larger reviewers as well. They make some really high quality videos, and it's a lot. I can definitely sort of appreciate it's a lot of work to sort of condense down all that information into like a nice, concise video. Even though their videos are around 15 minutes long, 15 minutes of like concise information, not rambling like I am. It's really good stuff. I'll name a few actually. Yeah. Jared's Tech, Gizmo Slip Tech. They kind of inspired me to try something like this. I'm not even close to doing like what they're doing. I just wanted to keep it simple, just to the results, and even then I tend to ramble a lot. I don't know. I get really distracted and excited about stuff I like, but I can't really narrow it down. So yeah. Anyway, as I said, hope you enjoyed the video. This has been Terry Lorenzo, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. It's like almost 3 o'clock in the morning where I am. I was doing testing for like ages, and I like, it's not even that much testing. Like I don't even know how these, like, Jared does, like, what does he do? He does like 25 games, 3 resolutions. I don't know how many people on this team, or if it's just Jared and maybe his like partner or something. But yeah, I appreciate you, Jared. That's some insane stuff. I don't know if this is gonna make it into the video. Maybe at the end. Maybe one of those like at the end things kind of thing. Yeah.